Welcome to the Dr. Dad's podcast, where a naturopath and chiropractor come together each week to share lifestyle medicine, health advice, and inspiring interviews with some of the top experts in health and wellness, bringing you the latest in nutrition, exercise, ancient healing, toxins and detox, your microbiome, mindset, hormones, brain, and much more. Stay tuned. We're going to teach you how to experience growth daily.
Hey everybody, you got the Dr. Dads coming at you once again. Dr. Nicholas, what's up, brother?
Yeah, Vancouver is beautiful right now. I'm living the dream here in sunny Vancouver. Actually, we were just kind of chatting with Wade beforehand. He used to be a resident of Vancouver, and there's so much beauty here in the springtime. So I'm loving life right now. In these last couple of weeks, it's been really great here. How about you? How's El Paso?
We're mirroring you down in the south, man. It's been pretty nice weather.
You guys always have nice weather, though.
Yeah, it's a little windy because it's the spring, but we're getting some really nice weather right now, right before they start to turn the heat up a little bit on us. So yeah. I'm enjoying it because the heat's coming really quick, man. So yeah, man, I'm excited. Today we're going to dive into some fun topics. I don't think we've gone real deep on probiotics and minerals and leaky gut. I mean, we talk about all these things all the time, right? But we haven't really gotten to actually talk to an expert about these things. So today we're connecting with Wade Lightheart. So I'm going to speak a little bit about Wade before we start talking to him, give you some information on him. So this guy's got an awesome bio, but let me try to narrow it down to the most important stuff. So Wade has been, he's an author, an athlete, a nutritionist, an expert on fixing digestion. He's been in the health industry for over 25 years. He's coached thousands of clients and is sought out by athletes and high-performance-oriented individuals worldwide for his advice on how to optimize their health and fitness levels. He is also, where do I start here, buddy? 3-time Canadian National All Natural Bodybuilding Champion, and he competed as a vegetarian, which I may have to ask you some questions, Wade, about that. He is a former Mr. Universe competitor, host of the Awesome Health podcast, and he's one of the world's premier authorities on natural nutrition and training methods. He majored in sports science at the University of New Brunswick, and he has authored numerous books on health, nutrition, and exercise, which has sold in over 80 countries. Buddy, I've heard you on a lot of podcasts, so it's nice to see the face, but your voice sounds really familiar. So Wade, thank you for joining us, man.
Great to be here, guys. And, it's hard to top the cherry blossoms in Vancouver in the spring. So I'm sure they're out full force right now, and that's a great time to be there. I don't know about El Paso. Other than that song, I think it was Marty Robbins made the song about El Paso.
Yeah.
That's all I know about El Paso.
Yeah.
and El Paso salsa, right?
There you
the
go.
Salsa's straight out of El
Paso. That's right. I forgot about El Paso. I mean, oh, geez.
I'll have to get you something better than that brand. But yeah, we got better salsa down here. Some of the homemade stuff, right?
So, David, where should we start, buddy?
Well, I'd like Wade just to kind of share his story. You have a very interesting story, man, and your approach of, being a vegetarian, going into bodybuilding. I think that's amazing. Kind of just tell us a little bit about how your journey has led you really into this focus with BiOptimizers and really focusing on people's digestion to make big changes in their health, man, from energy to their immune systems to assimilation. I mean, all these things that we're going to talk about. How did we end up here, man? And why is this such a big thing for you to really help people shift their health?
Yeah, obstacles, challenges, and crises. As most people, that's usually, I think a lot of people, we're so addicted to comfort nowadays that people don't necessarily recognize the opportunities when challenges comes to your life. And most people in the health and wellness industry that kind of end up in where I'm at usually had some sort of crisis in their life. And that was true for me, several. So I'll compress this as much as I can because it could go in a lot of different ways. But basically, I was a Canadian kid growing up on the East Coast in a very rural place. My parents, when I was 15 years old, decided to move to a very rural area from, a town of 3,000 to a town of us. It was 5 miles to my nearest neighbor, up a dirt road on a mountain, beautiful lake. They were caretakers of a private resort. But I didn't want to be there when I was 15. And being so isolated, I wasn't around my friends. I wasn't able to do the things that I wanted to do. And so I spent a lot of time by myself. So one of the advantages was I learned to know what it was like to be quiet And I learned, and what I mean quiet, both environmentally and mentally. And then also, I had a lot of time to reflect at an early age. So I think I started developing reflective and observational skills early on. Simultaneous to that, my sister, who was 4 years my senior, was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, which is a cancer of the lymph nodes. And I watched her go through the medical model for 4 years before she died at the age of 22. That had a big impact on me because I realized your health isn't a guarantee and your life isn't a guarantee. And so I was like, whoa, geez, you know, what is health and how do you live a long time? And, you know, so I made the classic mistake I think a lot of people did, and that's equate fitness with health. My sister, during that time of her, just before her diagnosis, around the time of her diagnosis, she gave me a bodybuilding magazine, and I had Troy Zucolato, and who just won Mr. California, and he was in California in Venice, and he had these two pretty girls, and I thought, well, maybe if I started getting some muscles like this guy, maybe I can get some of these bikini girls. You know, I bought the Joe Eater lie and started a gym in my barn. And Rocky IV was big around those times. So I started, you know, lifting and training in the gym with the sawhorses and the pulleys and, you know, the tractor tires and the whole 9 yards. And it wasn't because that's all I knew. That's all I had. There was no gym or anything. So I went on, studied exercise physiology at the university, but I found it was a lot of information about physiology and function and this, but there was no system. There was no thing that would lead me to where I wanted to go. It was a lot of research and cool things, how things work, but not so much application. When I got out of school, I started working at every facet of the health industry. I was working in a warehouse at one point, trucking products around. I worked in managed a gym and worked in a nutrition store as a sports nutrition guy while I was doing my bodybuilding career. Because what happened is Arnold Schwarzenegger wrote a book called Education of a Bodybuilder. And inside that book, I read it early on. He said, you can achieve anything in life if you have hard work, self-discipline, and a positive attitude. Well, I grew up in a very rural place where everybody worked hard. There was like logging, fishing, manual labor, everybody, but self-discipline and a positive attitude. Well, those were unique concepts to me, and I embraced them. And so if Arnold did it or Arnold said it, then I did it, because, you know, he was the world famous bodybuilder. He was a movie star. He was married to, like, he got everything that you would want. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. It's better than anybody I know. And off I went. And during that journey, I ended up opening up a juice bar, a supplement shop, and became a personal trainer. And in 1998, actually just before that, I was competing in the national circuit for Canada at the Canadian Nationals, and my first go at it. And, you know, at that point I realized that the sport wasn't what it was on the surface. It was essentially a drug culture. And in order for me to become a successful pro, I was going to have to engage in a whole bunch of drugs and really compromise my health. And that's not what I got into the sport for. So I retired, and that's when I opened up my juice bar and started that business. And a couple of years later, I got into meditation. A person gave me a book, and I read about it and started practicing a bunch of things, and really got into the meditating and kind of the Eastern philosophy around health and vitality and consciousness. And I thought that was really interesting. And so I read another book called, first book was Yogananda's book, Out of Ayurveda Yogi. And then it was The Holy Science, which was his gurus wrote this book. And he had this whole theory about nutrition based on nervous system response, the teeth, size of the digestive organs, natural aptitudes, for salivary response related to eating meat or eating berries. And I was like, okay, this seems pretty interesting. I'll try being a vegetarian for a couple weeks. So I did. And I didn't dry up and blow away. So I said, I'll go a couple more weeks, and then I'll go a couple more, another month. And so after 2 months, I said, I guess I just won't eat meat anymore, which is about as radical as it is, because I was basically a carnivore before that. I mean, if it didn't have meat in the meal, I didn't agree with it. And I'm dietary agnostic. I'm not these vigilante vegans. The whole point of going to a vegetarian diet was just to improve my meditation. They said it would help. I said, okay, I'll try it. And then I got this crazy idea that I could be a vegetarian bodybuilding champion. Because my teacher had said, well, if you apply these principles in your life and something doesn't exist, but it's right for you, it'll be created for you. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty bold statement. So I said, well, what if I became a vegetarian, drug-free national bodybuilding champion? And the story goes, that's how it turned out. And 2 years later, I was standing on stage at the Mr. Universe contest in India, of all places. And the miraculous thing about that, when I went to the national championships that year, there was one guy that I was never able to beat, Kevin Weiss. He was a fantastic bodybuilder. Still today, he's got a bunch of world champion records in both powerlifting and bodybuilding. He's a great guy too. But they changed the classes that year. And he got put in one class and I got put in the other, and I won my class and he won his, and I got to go to the Mr. Universe if it had not have. So maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't. But after the Mr. Universe contest, I didn't win. I got there. So that's what I'd say. And you know, there's a lot of guys breaking the rules and stuff like that. But even then, I don't really have the genetics to be a great champion. I got there through extra work, discipline, dietary stuff, and would just train harder, longer, diet longer and harder, and just pay the price deeper, not out of any talent. But after that contest, I gained 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks. I went from Mr. Universe to Mr. Marshmallow.
Wow.
And yeah, exactly. And the reason is I was trying to apply a meat-eating mentality to a vegetarian performance diet. And so we had two problems. One, I had learned a performance-based diet. Number two, as a meat eater, then I was attempting to do a hybrid vegetarian using whey protein, so I'd be a lacto-vegetarian on a plant-based diet. And I got into great shape and looked a certain way, but my joints hurt, my brain was foggy, and my skin wasn't that great. And then after the contest, the wheels fell off when I went back to a diet. And fortunately, I met a doctor by the name Dr. Michael O'Brien, and he was the picture of being a senior citizen. He's in his 70s. He's got perfect skin. He's super vibrant. He's giving these like all day lectures. He's not eating. And I'm like, okay, that's the guy I want to be like. And I went up to him after the lecture and I said, I don't understand. Dr. O'Brien, I've put 16 years in this sport. I've reached the aesthetic idea. I'm super disciplined on everything that I do. What don't I know? Because I'm obviously lost my health. And he said something to me that changed my life. He said to me, Wade, you've learned to build the body from the outside in. I'm going to teach you how to build the body from the inside out. And subsequently, he taught me about digestive health. He taught me about the role of enzymes and the role of probiotics and why you wanted to go to more natural-based products in your life, and why, you know, different aspects of mineralization and how it impacted the nervous system and all these kind of things. And so I did. I went all in. I went on his program. I went to a completely raw food diet. And in 6 months, I recaptured my health. I recaptured my physique. I felt amazing. And Matt and I started a business, my business partner, BiOptimizers. We said, okay, well, let's start. He thought it's unusual that you're a vegetarian. It's a cool story as a bodybuilder. So we started a course, and my role and mission of that course was to help athletes who were sacrificing maybe their health for performance to avoid some of the mistakes that I had made, right? And that was my goal. And over the next 4 years, we coached over 15,000 clients worldwide and got a lot of what I would say is clinical data from feedback from people, what was working is not. And then I went back and won a couple more national championships, went to the Worlds, got fifth instead of 13th. And at that point I said, okay, I got something that works. And from that point on, we've been teaching people about those principles, which led to the development of BiOptimizers, which is basically ending physical suffering and activating what we call biologically optimized health.
What a story. I mean, I can't help but, feel, my heartstrings being pulled when you talked about your sister like that. And so one question on that, knowing what you know now, looking back at some of your family health, do you think that there is a role for people to obviously there's a role for people to focus on prevention, but if you had the opportunity to go back and talk to your family, your sister, what have you, what are some of the core things that you think that you would have talked about?
One of the big honors that I got a few years ago is I became an advisor to the American Anti-Cancer Institute. And so I help people who are either dealing with cancer, have cancer, or post-cancer. And I think the first thing is when, things were different back then. There was no access to other information. We're also in New Brunswick. It's not very supportive in the technology that advise, while you're going through the care. So there was a lot of helplessness when they start using big names and things like that, and so I feel really challenged for the people around cancer, because I'm not so sure that when your numbers come up, that your numbers are coming up, whether it's cancer or whether it's a car crash or whether it's some sort of weird disease. I'm not so convinced that, of the whole Newtonian paradigm, that everything's a cause. But what I can say is I've learned that if you want to avoid a disease or a disability adjusted life expectancy, if you go back to the New England Journal of Medicine, I think it was in around 2003, it was during the Bush administration, the last one, the younger one. He wrote a paper and said that the disability adjusted life expectancy was 60 years old. And so you're basically spending 25% of your life dependent on some sort of technology that is compromising your life, whether it's medication or surgery, or you're in a wheelchair, or you can't move around, or that's okay, so what that means is if I follow what everybody else is doing, the likelihood that I've got a very compromised life at 60 years old is very likely. And I need to figure out how to put the things in my life that is going to at least guarantee that I'm going to have I'm going out in a barrel roll kind of thing with my life, as opposed to leaving earlier than I would want to, or having a compromised life. So I think what's great now is there's more information technology. What's challenging now is that you can find an opposing position about everything. But the one thing I would do is you want to have great digestion. And the reason is any undigested food in your body becomes a potential toxin. We also would say that choosing natural grown products over, unnatural or processed food, the more processed something is better. It's the more chances it's going to activate epigenetic responses that may lead to an illness or disease. And so I think with a little bit of genetic testing, some basic testing with a good professional doctor, a HOMO IR test to measure blood sugar. Diabetes is a big problem. Let's look at pulse test to see, your proteins and what's your potential for heart disease, a genetics and epigenetic test, some Dutch test to get your hormones lined up, and a SpectraCell test to see what vitamins and minerals that you absorb well or don't absorb well and what ones you're deficient of. Now we can hone in and in combination with your genetics and epigenetics and your lifestyle factors to say, okay, well, you've got this gene and this gene and this gene, which could potentially be this. Now we can mitigate that with a really strong strategy to avoid triggering that activation. And I think that's the route that biohackers or biological optimizers can go.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful answer. I mean, that's the core thing I think that's missing in conventional medicine, or however you want to call it, allopathic, is that the individualized care is substituted for algorithms. You've got this is what you do. And I love that you brought that up. I think that's really important. So tell us a little, let's dive into some of these core tools that you've brought through BiOptimizers. I'd love for you to dive into minerals a little bit. I think this is such an important area that people are just sort of bypassing and not really focusing on. People are aware of iron deficiency, or maybe you should take some more magnesium, but I'd love a little teaching just on minerals from your perspective.
Well, here's the challenge that I think a lot of people don't recognize, is that in 1945, the world changed radically. The United States dropped the nuclear bomb on Japan, ushered in the end of the war. There was a changing from people living in rural farm-based communities into the cities as the manufacturing giant of the United States happened and technology started processing around the world. Government said, how are we going to meet the food demands of the baby boom? Because this population was exploding as well. And also, I would say the success of antibiotics. You know, people just died from all sorts of diseases, but now, so we had antibiotics, technological innovation, and the movement from traditional farming methods. And the government started to apply factory farming concepts. And what that means is they were going to monoculture farming. And then they just said, hey, we got all this leftover nitrogen from all these bombs. Let's put that on the soil. And boom, next thing you know, we can make a bigger yield. But our definition of food in nutrient quality, phytonutrients, minerals, vitamins, enzymes, and probiotics, all these things that were natural when we consumed a more natural-based diet, or was local-based diet, all that was wiped out the window because we didn't define it, we didn't understand it, we may not even known it or recognized its importance at the time. Fast forward 80 years, now we've added herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides, which interrupt the enzymatic activity of bugs. Enzymes are what's the difference between stones, plants, and people. It's the metabolic workforce, or your metabolic bank account, according to Dr. Edward Howell, who wrote Enzyme Nutrition and Enzymes for Food, Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity. And so, and then we said the whole thing around, well, if you're destroying all the natural probiotics that are involved with these foods, which are part of the digestion, because we live in a symbiotic relationship with our bacteria, which I always say there's 10% good, 10% bad, and 80% opportunists. There are literally hundreds of strains in your bacteria. Part is a genetic inheritance, and part of it is your environment that is going to culminate that, which is going to determine maybe which diet is best for you. Maybe what things that you can eat and feel great, and what things are going to cause problems, or what things are going to be a toxin as opposed to a nutrient. And so I was classically trained in nutrition. I'm a sports nutritionist. I went to university, studied nutrition stuff. There's like 2 paragraphs on enzymes and maybe a page on probiotics. It just wasn't taught. And that lack of understanding, that ignorance, if you will, in my own part, led to my own digestive disaster. Well, then it turns out that everybody is really fighting an uphill battle because they don't understand that they're in this 80-year bubble that's involving all these changes. Then you add preservatives, then you add dyes. A peach today, you would have to eat, 50 plus peaches today, today to get the same equivalent nutrient value of a peach in 1955.
My goodness.
And so one of the big obstacles, particularly in North America, is our magnesium levels in the soil are degraded to virtually nothing. So almost everybody in North America is some level of deficient of magnesium, which is the control mineral for calcium, which everybody knows you need to have calcium for strong bones. But if you're taking calcium and you don't have enough magnesium, your body starts dumping calcium out of the system. So you're actually accelerating the problem as opposed to fixing it, because people didn't understand the ratios and how everything works and things like that.
I love the picture you painted. I think it's so important to take it out of the myopic look at looking at individual nutrients and actually take a step back and see where we actually went wrong. David, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, he answered my next question, which was, we all know the gut plays this huge role in our health, but how did we get here, and why is this such an uphill battle for everybody? But he hit it on the head. So just going into more of the mineral conversation, I'd like you to talk a little bit about BiOptimizers, this magnesium breakthrough you guys have, because it's very unique in the fact that you guys use quite a few different forms of magnesium. This isn't just a regular magnesium supplement, because most people, they think, oh, I need to be on magnesium. They just go to a health food store, they grab magnesium off the shelf, and they start taking it. So where are people going wrong there, and what are they not getting out of it? When they're only just getting a very, honestly, just one version of this stuff.
Well, it's again, specialized knowledge. So, and I have to give credit where credit is due. We've come up with this product thanks to a conversation I had with Charles Poliquin at the Bulletproof Conference a number of years ago. And Charles Poliquin, for people who don't know, is he's known as a strength sensei. He just died not that long ago prematurely, which is unfortunate, but he had coached Olympic athletes in 27 different sports, like gold medalists in 27 different sports, as well as the who's who of professional sports. And when I attended this lecture and was talking to him, one of the things that he said, that the stress levels that are under these athletes are extraordinary, and they have huge demands on their magnesium levels, as also from the nervous system, as a vasodilator, as far as a component that was involved in the manufacturing of a lot of neurochemicals. He was the first guy to connect Chinese medicine with Western medicine. In other words, the elements in Chinese medicine connected with a neurochemical dominance inside of people who were, so he would only train people that were either dopamine dominant or acetylcholine dominant. He said, forget it. You're never going to win an Olympic medal if you don't have those.
Oh, wow.
You know, so he was very radical. And he used different types of magnesium because he said the research demonstrated that different types of magnesium were uptaken by the body in a different way. And I'm like, that's fascinating. Fast forward a few years later, I had been stressing myself out. I had been running 3 companies, working 14 hours a day for about 2 years straight, never even took a day off. And I burned myself out, and we did a brain test on myself, and it looked like I had the brain of a 70-year-old man. It was like not lit up at all. I'm like, okay, we got major problems here. And then I took a SpectraCell test under the guidance of my naturopathic doctor, and turns out, guess where I was deficient? Magnesium was massively deficient. And I was like, oh, this is why I'm feeling low. It's feeling stressed out, and I'm like, really. You know, I started waking up from anxiety, or I was in a very stressful situation in one of my companies. And I was like, okay, I got to make some adjustments. So I always say that you can't supplement your way out of a bad lifestyle. And I want to classify in my case, but we did say, okay, well, let's look at all these magnesiums. And I just bought virtually every different type of magnesium on the market, myself and Matt, my co-founder. And then we started taking them. And there was these guys back in the 70s, Dr. Linus Pauling, Dr. Avram Hofer, and Dr. David Hawkins, who developed what's called orthomolecular nutrition. And they were treating advanced states of psychiatric illness with like super physiological levels of vitamins and minerals. And I was like, well, why don't I apply that to my own strategy? Like as a strategy for myself. And they had a very specific way where you would take a small dosage and you would go up in divided dosages until you break the GI barrier. That is, you get the runs. And I was like, okay, I'm going to apply their strategy to my magnesium deficiency. And I'm going to test these different magnesiums. And so we would test each of the magnesiums independently. And I would see how much I could take before I, get disaster pants. So it's a very graphic and challenging experiment, but I thought it was worthwhile because, again, going back to every obstacle, every challenge is an opportunity. You just might not know what it is. Also, I just wanted to feel better. And so we categorized the different magnesiums in a spreadsheet, which ones seemed to have the best results. And we have a lot of biofeedback and stuff personally. And then we started testing them in combination and finally came up with the last product, which had 7 different types of magnesiums that could be utilizable by all parts of the body. And then we were like, well, why don't we just put this in one bottle because no one else has done it? This would probably be helpful for a lot of people. But that turned out to be more complicated than we thought because there's a thing called flow regulators or excipients is the technical term. And they put them in capsules so that the magnesium or whatever the product is will flow through the nozzle properly when you're producing. And when you have all these different types of magnesiums, they're different sizes and they kind of stick together. And so we had to get special technology in order to get that to happen. We were very clear we didn't want to use any funky excipients. We don't do that. So and then when you got them all in the capsule, you needed a specialized capsule so the capsule didn't break. So after we solved all those problems, we produced this product. Said, well, maybe we could sell it and people would use it. And so we released it, and we never seen a flood of testimonials like this before. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'm sleeping better. My mood's up. I don't really." And I was like, "My muscles I don't have twitching in my muscles anymore because magnesium's regulated in that. My headache's gone away. My blood pressure better. It got kind of crazy, like way more than I anticipated." And so we started diving in more and more and more and learning more and more about the process. And we're still undergoing even more research, but that's how magnesium breakthrough came to be. And if you want, I can go through the different types of magnesiums we put in there and why we do and all that sort of stuff.
Let's do it. Yeah, actually, I think
it.
that'd be fascinating for people to hear.
Yeah. So now, just so people know, magnesium is found in dark chocolate, avocados, nuts, almonds like cashews, Brazils, seeds, pumpkin, flax, and chia, bananas, leafy greens, tofu, and legumes. Those are very good sources of magnesium. Most people, unless they're making a serious consideration, are probably not going to have those things sufficiently enough to meet their magnesium levels. And ironically, living in an EMF polluted world or being under blue lights a lot with TVs and screens, we actually burn magnesium a little higher. So I'll talk about, and I'll tie this all back in at the end with the bucket theory of nutrition and Linus Pauling and those guys and how I did this and how people can get maximum benefits. So we have magnesium chelate, which is good for quieting the nervous system. It's also with neurotransmitters. Citrate, this is the one that's, I call it a double-edged sword, magnesium, so we only put a bit of it in. Citrate draws water into the intestines. It can be very helpful as a laxative. So a lot of times when people get stressed, the intestinal walls start to contract and it won't release. Same thing if you have muscle cramping. We get cramping on stage. Bodybuilding sometimes because you dehydrate really down, you offset your mineral. So citrate will bring water into the intestines and give you a flushing sensation. So too much, you can't dose up really high with citrate. Bisglycinate. This one here is great for blood pressure. Type 2 diabetes, helps break down sugars. Osteoporosis, reduces the the risk of bone fractures. Then you also have migraine headaches, and it's a vasodilator. And most migraine headaches are caused from, or a large number of them are caused from a constriction of the arteries, usually because of some inflammatory condition, something happened and inflamed it. And that's where food allergies come in, is very common. So magnesium can help that. And then it's also been shown to help with the production of serotonin. Because a lot of people that are on antidepressants, for example, they have to cycle through different ones because they burn out the magnesium and things like that. They're pre-chemicals for neurotransmitter formation. Magnesium malate, this is related to enzymes, which we're really experts on that, particularly people who are suffering from things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome and stuff like. Oftentimes there's an energy metabolism component, and some people find benefit from magnesium malate. Taurate, cardiovascular health, prevention of migraines as well. Taurine kind of acts like a GABA neurotransmitter. So GABA is a neurotransmitter that's been known to block impulses to the brain and stuff like GABA. So it can be very helpful to calm down when you're like, we always call it overclocked. Right, so it's really good, as well as that one particularly is good for PMS. So a lot of women who suffer from a lot of pain and cramping will find that taurate very helpful. Orotate, this one is one of the big ones that Paula went into, particular people that had heart arrhythmias. Magnesium is a control relaxation component in your heart, and athletes tend to lose a lot of minerals through sweating. If they're running a lot or playing a sport where they're sweating a lot, then you hear of these athletes or these guys dropping dead, in a marathon or whatever, and you're like, well, how's that possible? Well, almost always you can trace it to some sort of neurotransmitter or some aspect that their transmitters were off, and they weren't firing properly. So that's a really good one. And then we have aspartate, which is, again, for neuromuscular components as well. So when you combine it with malate and glycinate and citrate, it becomes a lot more bioavailable. So the combination of those seems to give a better absorption. I'm not completely clear of what the mechanism is per se, but we just seem to notice better results for that. Also, well as it helps with the absorption of B-complex vitamins, vitamin C, and vitamin E. And so, these are the the magnesiums that we put into the formula, why we put them in there. We grabbed the research and the data to kind of go through it and kind of make the best magnesium we could, because that's our philosophy. If we can't make the best product in a class, then we don't bother.
That's awesome. I noticed it, unless I missed it, but did you guys not put threonate in there? Because I know there's a lot of information on that one for sleep. But
we actually used to put threonate in the formulation. The problem, and threonate's a great product on its own. I think it's a great magnesium. The challenge with it is source and supply. So the problem with the threonate is to get it, it's super expensive, and it's hard to get a good dosage of it. And the second thing is, there's a knockoff threonate, which is sold outside of North America, that people are feeding, they're compromising their stash on production, if they will. And what happens is that threonate's not to the quality standards that we're happy with. So in order to meet the demands and handle all these magnesiums, we weren't able to do it. And I will make a small announcement that we have found something that's even better, which is going into the new formulas, which is magnesium sucrasomial. And
Jesus.
that one's...
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, we were on a mission to find out, and we'll be talking more about that in a little bit. I'm not going to release all the information, but that's going to be a product that I think is going to be even outperforming any of the magnesiums that we have to date. So we'll be adding that to the formula. And we also put humic and fulvic acid in, which is the acids that plants use to convert inorganic matter into biologically available matter. And it's a delivery system for just about everything. B6 and manganese citrate, and those help in the delivery. So it's not just having all the products in there. It's, can you get it from the gut into your cells?
Wow, that was awesome. I mean, I think probably most people know about glycinate or citrate, but you drop some amazing information there. And I know that everybody who's either challenged with muscle or recovery or brain health or sleep issues, they're going to be wanting to know where to get this stuff. So I know we're going to talk about it at the end, but just a quick drop for accessing your products. Where can people go?
Yeah, just go to bioptimize.com/DrDads.
Yeah.
Put in Dr. Dad's 10, they'll get a 10% discount on any one of the products that we have as well. So
that's awesome. Thank you so much for doing that for our listeners. No, you brought up some of the interesting cofactors that are attached to these magnesiums or amino acids, and you talked about sort of the role in supporting and building enzyme production in the body. So we need enzymes in order to utilize and extract nutrition out of our body. I'd love to take this conversation and dive in a little bit more into enzymatic support and the breakdown of the microbiome and chronic stress. And, so if you can kind of help us tiptoe into that world, that'd be great as well.
I'd love to. And this information changed my life. So when I had my digestive disaster, so to speak, and here, I had all the right coaching, had all the right discipline. I thought I was doing everything right and messed it up. And I met my mentor. He introduced me to the concept of enzyme nutrition from a guy by the name of Dr. Edward Howe, who also wrote a book, Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity. And Dr. Howe expanded on the original enzymatic research by Dr. Pottinger. So everybody's familiar with Pottinger's cats. And what he did is he started repeating this on other species. And basically what he did is he had 3 different categories. He fed animals live food that had enzymes in it, or raw food, I should say, that had its enzymes present. Because every species on the planet eats its food in a raw state, which you get not just the vitamins and the minerals and the aminos and the fatty acids, the carbohydrates. You get the enzymes that are concordant with that, as well as the bacteria. So if you look at horses and cows, they go for fresh, enzymatically rich food, sprouts and the green stuff, because that has the most life force or the most enzymes in it. And if you look at a lion taking out a zebra, it eats the entrails where the enzymes and probiotics are first, and then it eats the carcass. And a bear will eat salmon or blueberries, both. But humans, we cook our food. And what that forces us is to manufacture enzymes ourselves in order to break down, digest, and absorb and utilize these food. And that wasn't the way we were designed. And so there's a huge metabolic cost to that. And I'll come back around to that in a second. Because Dr. Howe, he took cats, dogs, rabbits, chicken. He did all these different species because they had shorter lifetimes than humans. And he fed one group enzyme deficient diets, one group with its natural raw food diet, and the next one he did with an enzymatically enhanced diet. And the results were pretty profound. You could read about him in his Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity. But long story short, the ones that were fed the enzymatically deficient diet died first. The ones that had the normal diet lived a normal life, and the ones that had an enzymatically enhanced lived longer. But what was interesting about the first group, the ones that had an enzymatic deficient diet, by the third generation of enzymatic deficiency in their diet, they exerted 3 different characteristics. Number one, they started to have sociological behavior that was different than their species was recognized for. They acted strangely. They weren't acting like cats, didn't act like cats, rabbits. They started acting funny. Second thing, they started to show all sorts of genetic-based diseases. In other words, the rise in mutations were out of control. And the third thing is they lost the ability to procreate, which Howe, I think it was in the 50s, said, well, with the food farming methods that we're using right now and how people are eating, people are going to more highly processed foods, we're going to end up in the same problem in about 3 generations. Well, here we are, 3 generations. I mean, you see, go on YouTube, there's lots of strange sociological behavior. The genetic-based diseases are rising exponentially. And if you look at birth rates, they're down in virtually every single industrialized nation of the world has descending. We don't have a population problem growing. We're headed for a population collapse as we become more industrialized. And a lot of people aren't using proper data and analysis of population models, or they're not releasing it. And we have to realize is, well, why is that? Well, industrialization will wipe out the species if we don't alter the food production and distribution and preparation format that we talked about, that we created 80 years ago. And if it's moving forward in the idea of progress and convenience. So all that to say, I know there's a lot to go through, but
important.
Like
so important.
The big picture. Mm-hmm. But enzymes, you need enzymes to get your proteins to get your minerals, and minerals to get your vitamins. And when I was on my performance-based diet, what happened is I was piling in all this extra protein that I wasn't able to break down and digest. And what was happening is that undigested protein was building up uric acid in the body. So my joints hurt. My brain was foggy. I looked great, but the pictures were awesome, but I felt like garbage. And people just said, well, that's what you need to do. And I think a lot of people just say, well, you're just supposed to get overweight when you're 50, and you're just supposed to have achy joints, and you're supposed to pass gas at the dinner table, and everybody's supposed to laugh because it's grandpa, the old pull my finger thing. But really, what's normal is not necessarily what's healthy. And I think people have to make that course and understand that if you're not making, I would say, significant healthy habits now, you will end up as one of those casualties, those unnecessary casualties down the road. And so having enzymes, I take enzymes before every single meal. The reason being is because if I was a few hundred years ago, I would be eating fresh food. I would be eating these things that were fresh and normal to my nature, and we don't anymore. And so therefore, I know when I eat a carrot out of my mother's garden versus a carrot I get at Erewhon, the most expensive health store I've ever been into, the carrot in my mother's garden tastes better than the best organic carrot I can get here, and those are some of the reasons why.
That was awesome. David, go ahead.
So, there's a million questions, brother, but we got to move. I don't want to jump in, but we got to talk about probiotics. But I kind of want to focus on this cognibiotic that you guys have, because I think it's brilliant. There's a number of people we see constantly. All of us from the digestive health issue, but then you see an onslaught of, like you're talking, this behavioral health of they're not adapting to stress as well, and they're having brain fog, and the memory and cognition is starting to go. So can you talk a little bit first about this gut-brain connection and why this is so important, that we're doing the right things for our microbiome, for our brain?
Oh, it's such a huge thing. Because, all right, so 5 stages of digestion. You chew your food, you bring your food in, the food goes down the esophagus. That's where the enzymes are supposed to break it down in the upper cardiac portion of the stomach. Hydrochloric acid comes in 30 to 60 minutes later. That wipes out foreign bugs, and it starts to change the pH where different enzymes become active and then deactivate it. Then minerals are added to that mixture as it exits out of the intestine, or out of the stomach into the intestine, and then your microbiome starts to finish the result. We live in this symbiotic relationship. They're going to convert that food either into energy units or building blocks, or it's now a toxin, and the bad guys are going to eat it and crap in your brain, in your blood, in your brain, and you get leaky gut holes in your intestinal tract where basically food is start to leak into, or crap is literally leaking into your blood, causing all sorts of problems. So if you're waking up with crusty eyes, brain fog, you need a giant coffee in the morning, you got chronic bad breath. Generally, you've got some undigested food that's rotting in your body, okay? And it's not getting into the cells where you need it. And then, so understanding that is really important. So if you miss the enzymes or you have low hydrochloric acid, you miss those first critical stages of digestion. And then now you're setting up, the probiotics may survive, they may starve. If you had a series of antibiotics at any point in your life, you probably altered your microbiome significantly. High levels of stress, chemical agents that we are taking in innumerable amounts, particularly the ones that are antimicrobial, farming-based pesticides can disrupt their microbiomes that you're getting. I mean, even the organics, the USDA allows 50 different chemicals on that food. So we have, what I'm trying to say is it's virtually impossible to have a perfect microbiome, whatever dietary philosophy you're following. And I believe that people adhere to different dietary philosophies in order to manage either the compromised digestion that they have or the genetic-based digestion. And obviously, it's oftentimes a combination of the two. And so in your gut, it's estimated that up to 90% of your serotonin, kind of the happy, feel-good neurochemical, is manufactured by bacteria there. So we're like, okay, well, if that's the case, wouldn't it make sense that if people that were having low mood or these type of things, what if we started introducing these type of probiotics into the diet? Maybe that would make a difference. And then we also combined, we took a number of them, different probiotics that were shown in research to work that way. And then we also combined it with, we had an expert in Chinese medicine that was able to provide the various herbs and plants that were famous being cooked together to treat people with these conditions in Chinese medicine. So I said, well, let's provide both, because we want people to get a somatic response right away. And number two, we want to replenish the probiotics that they need. And those plants are symbiotic with these probiotics. And so it's like, okay, so we're going to try and remanufacture what you might find in nature, only combine all the technology so that you can get a lot of nature all in a pill. So that was the reasoning behind the psychology. And it turns out it's been fairly effective in doing that. So really happy about that. And we have a university team right now in Europe who are experts in microbiome and basically determining how that mucoid plaque lives and what level the bacteria lives in. And so we test all our products. We put vitamins and minerals in them, see what happens. We hit them with EMF waves from Wi-Fi and see what happens. We give them different mediums to see which ones grow faster, and do these bacteria wipe out gram-negative or gram-positive? And so when we come up with these kind of formulations, there's been a lot of information and research, and then we don't just rely on it. We kind of come up with a formula that we feel is effective, and then we're always looking at, well, how do we make this more effective? So it's, and then we give a 100% money-back guarantee on anybody that tries our products to de-risk it, because we want people, if they're taking their health in serious and they've got a professional And I do believe they should have a professional to help them guide their choices that might be best for them, because you could spend $1 million and get nowhere, and spend $100 and get everywhere with a little bit of targeted nutrition. But we want to encourage people to do these experiments with their health, to try it and try KogniBiOtics. And we have so many people that swear by that product for keeping their mood up. And you just take either a couple of caps in the morning or a couple of caps at night. I take 4 every morning myself. It makes me feel good, except now I've been fasting for 2 days, so I'm just drinking water for the last couple of days. So I'm not taking anything right now. I always take a little period off every now and then, do a fasting break.
I love that you brought that in. That's a big part of our daily habits. Just 2 weeks ago, I did my 5-day water fast, and it's such a powerful tool. And
how was it for you? Like, what day did you start feeling good?
For me, it's the day 2 to 3 that I hate. It's it's the loss of joy is gone after day 1. And then it's like this sort of slow climb and massively dropping blood sugars. But this time I actually use amino acids, but I do like, I don't know, at least 4 fasts a year with a group of patients and whatnot. But I used amino acids this time, and it just maintained my blood sugar in a little bit more of a stability, and my ketones were still doing great things or what have you. But it was a very different fast this past time. So
I love that you're hacking the fast.
Oh, it's just fun to play with it, right?
Yeah,
because you can be a purist, in some level, and just water only, forget it. I don't touch anything else, and then as you get more, experience in it, it's fun to be able to manipulate things. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's part of the fun as you get used to setting the parameters. And what's interesting is I've solidified my fasting so well that I'm like, okay, now I'm going back to trying a purity one, because I've been using a lot of, we got another brand, Nutopia, which is cool. All these.
They say world domination on the front of it.
Yeah, that's kind of fun, right? World domination. We got 8 different nootropic products to optimize brain function, because everybody's brain chemistry is different, so they're going to resonate with different ones, and then we customize it. They give us the feedback, and then we dial it in for their brain. We've got a great neurochemist, and so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try and just go without anything for a few days, and I can tell you it's a major drop-off.
Yeah,
it's a major drop-off, but I think it's a good one to experiment, and then you enjoy everything even more.
Totally. Yeah, I think nothing dives as deep as the water fast. Well, I guess you could do a dry fast.
Have you done one of those?
I've done 2 days, and then at the end of 2 days, I got 2 small kids, and I found my irritation levels were just going too high. Like, they're high energy guys, and I think it has to be the right place. But my throat was killing me when I had my first sip of water. I had to really ease back into water. But
really, I haven't done the dry fast. I've been considering it, but it seems pretty radical, and you definitely want to be in an environment where you don't have kids and stuff.
Oh, totally. I mean, the ketones were just flying. I like the analogy of this whole squeezing of the sponge, and sort of just letting your bodies really dry right out and purge whatever's stuck in there. But I wanted to ask you, actually, I mean, now that we're talking about your lifestyle a little bit more, you were a vegetarian bodybuilder. I know David wants to know more about this question. Where are you now? Like, where's your philosophy around food? Have you brought meat back in? What are you doing these days?
Oh, great question. So number one, I'm dietary agnostic. Choose the diet that's right for you. That's my number one caveat. And when I mean right for you, one that you feel good on, one that you can stick with, and one that suits your genetics and epigenetics. But for me, I'm still haven't eaten meat. It'll be 20 years this July, I guess. Yeah. And like I said, there was it wasn't like, hey, I just tried an experiment and it worked for me. I will have eggs occasionally, and I'll have dairy products occasionally. Like I'll have some cheese, and I'll have some ice cream every now and then, and things like that. So, it's like I'm not like some crazy man that I'm just super rigid about everything. I eat good, and when it's UFC fights over here, and I got my friends over, we have some. I get out all these kind of cool snack foods because I'm a big snacker. I love snack. Like I get these like protein pea crunchy things, and they like the all the gluten-free kind of chips and everything. You know, I do all that, but I still have all the snacks, right? I'm like, I'm not. So people are always fascinated by that stuff. And and I'm on a mission that's going to be our next project is how do we make food that is that social food, healthy social food is where I'm going. That's where I want, that we have a mission that we want to get that in the next few years to figure that out, because that's where people go off. Right? I mean, you give me a bag of chips.
That's my weakness too, man.
I'm the rudest person. Like, if you hand me a bag of chips in a group, I will sit there and eat every chip and never share, never even think to share with anybody. Like, I go totally drug addict, let's woof the whole bag. And it doesn't matter how big that bag is.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
It's demolished.
I'll just annihilate it. And if there's another one, I'll go for that too.
Oh, I love that. That's my weakness too, man. I get it. David, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, we're running out of time, man, but you guys were talking about fasting. You've got to talk about this real quick for me, brother. So you got this supplement called KAPEX. I was patiently awaiting this one a while back. You guys were developing it. There's tons of people that need something like this. You know, keto's, really popular right now. People are finally understanding the power of trying something like this, if it works for you. Kind of tell me where that supplement will play a role for people and why it is needed by so many people when they're trying to adopt or get into a ketogenic type diet.
Well, this is a great story. So Matt, my co-founder, we've been buddies for 20 years, and he's been doing the ketogenic diet for 26 years. And so when he would encourage me to do a keto-based diet, so I would try to do vegetarian keto. Once I got my fats to a certain part, it would start showing up in my stool. And I'd be like, dude, I just think that I'm lacking some enzymes or something's not like I'm just not able to break down that amount of fat in my diet for whatever reason. And he just does really well on fats, but has a hard time with carbohydrates. And so we always back and forth, and we argue our points and things like that. And I think that's what you want to do, is trying to come to a better conclusion, not avoid conflict, but you want to expose the flaws. And when he developed, so in secret, without me knowing, he was determined to get me successful in a ketogenic diet. He researched all the different enzymes involved in fat metabolism. And so he combined that with our famous Masszymes proteolytic formulation, the proteases that we have in that blend. And he combined it with 4 different types of lipases, the enzymes that break down fats. So proteases break down protein, lipases break down fats. And then he added some stimulants for bile as well, a little bit of hydrochloric acid inside that whole. So it was like a complete formulation and then also added some 7-keto DHEA, which helps kind of stream the electron stream in the cell at the mitochondrial level. So the idea was, we're going to break down the fats. We're going to use things like L-carnitine and bile salts to make sure that the fats get transported out of the gut properly. And then we're going to optimize the flow of them into the mitochondria so that you get more energy. And it works. Totally works. I was able to take my fat intake up really high on a ketogenic diet. And although for me, I didn't think it was the best diet for me, I was able to do that. And maybe I could have stuck with it longer. But I don't know if I can follow this for the long term lifestyle wise, but I could be successful on it, which was great. And I take it in the morning every day for energy, because you do get, it just seems to metabolize my fats particularly well. I don't know why someone wouldn't try it, because it's definitive. Like, people okay, I feel an energy boost, but it's not an energy boost that you get from stimulants. Most people think of, I need energy, I'm going to, guzzle a Monster drink, or I'm going to take some caffeine, ephedrine stack, or some neurotransmitter combination that jacks me up. And that's fine, but you can only do that for so long before you have problems. So that's where the formula came from. And so people love it.
Oh, it was incredible, man. It was just, I remember when ketos got real popular, it was just, people would constantly struggle with this, and you guys kind of came and brought that solution. So that's huge, man. So many people need to know about that one.
26 years he's been doing keto. So and now Dom D'Agostino's come on as an advisor. He was very impressed in what it was able to demonstrate and produce in the body. And that's what led to our other product, Blood Sugar Breakthrough, which is regulating blood sugar. So we're looking at how do we get blood sugar down? How do we get us metabolizing fats, using those for fuel? How do we optimize our digestive system and then allow our nervous system to recover and optimize our brain chemistry? So we're just kind of been tacking it piece by piece over the years to continue to optimize people's health.
Man, you guys have covered the full spectrum, man. I mean, you guys kind of have these amazing solutions for almost anything when it comes to digestion or regulating metabolism, blood sugar, enzyme. I mean, you guys got it all. It's really impressive, man. So, Wade, real quick, can you tell everybody about, there's 2 things on your all's website. You have a really cool 12-week program that you guys have on there. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yes. Whether anybody buys their products or not, I would suggest they check out the Awesome Health course. This course I've taken, it's 7 to 15 minute videos, and there is like 84 of them. It's designed to go, you did a video a day for 12 weeks. I mean, I had Miss Olympia competitor Natalia Coella do it in a weekend, but she's a freak. she's an amazing lady. But the goal of it is to kind of break down the first principles of how to build a lifestyle around the diet that you want. And so we start with air, water, and exercise. What I say is the non-negotiables. They're more important than the diets. If you're not doing deep breathing, getting your mitochondria functioning properly, if you're not hydrating properly, and you're not exercising, then what you're going to get out of your diet's not that much. You get a certain amount, but those things are non-negotiables. Then we get into sunlight and optimizers, mental beliefs and attitude, education, testing, and coaching. And so the final piece of that, there's a piece in there that everybody needs to watch, and that's the bucket theory of nutrition, which is what I based on orthomolecular nutrition. Your lifestyle or your exhaustion rate is like a bucket. All the nutrients, all the energy, all the enzymes, everything that you need is like a bucket, and that's diminishing day by day by day. And it's diminishing at the rate that you're burning through it. And so the more stressed out your life is, the more work that you're doing, the more that the bigger the hole in the bucket. And most people look at nutrition just trying to fill up what they're burning. And what Hoffer and Pauling and Hawkins said way back in orthomolecular nutrition is like, no, let's fill the bucket up and then titrate down so that once I have a full bucket, I still only need to take the amount that I'm burning. That way you get a faster result from your results. You get the desired benefit from whatever supplement that was. And you spend less money, especially if you've done a little bit of testing beforehand with a professional. The professional says, okay, you're deficient in this, you're deficient in this, deficient in this. Great. Let's pick a couple of 1 or 2 or 3 of those, and let's start dosing up systematically till we hit our zone, and then titrate down to just so we're in replacement. We check it in 6 months or a year, and we're like, great, we got that one covered. And by doing that, and the whole course is full of little tricks and hacks to optimize your health, your vitality, your diet, and how to get the most out of your nutrition, and the experts that are helping you so that you make smart choices as opposed to randomly shotgunning various ideas that you picked up on the internet that day that was a trend, a fad, or something that a writer needed to crank out and before they hit their deadline.
Oh, it's amazing, man. So needed too, man. I don't know how many supplement companies do this kind of education for their clientele and their customers, man, to make sure that they're getting the most out of it. So my hat's off to you guys, man. You're doing all the right things for everybody. It's awesome.
I appreciate that. It's, going back years ago, when I saw my sister lose her health, that made an impact on me. I wanted to know what health was. And I made the mistake of going down a performance route, which the fitness level is a health. So I got that, but the mistakes I made in that. And when I lost my own health, I was like, man, I really could identify with my clients at that point because I understood the frustration, the struggle, and I didn't know what to do. And if I hadn't met Dr. Michael O'Brien at that time, I would not have the diet app. If I hadn't met, my coach, Scott Abel, I would never got to the performance level I want. If I never met, so all these people along the way that made a difference, I just combined them all into one course, one thing that people, I just give it away. And I think they'll find some value in it.
That's beautiful, man.
That's amazing. I mean, there's 1,000 more conversations we'd love to have with you, and for some of that, I'm sure we're just gonna have to tune into the, what'd you say, 200 plus interviews you do a year. I love how education focused you are. You exude, this purposeful, attitude towards health and wanting to constantly move the needle forward in health and optimization. So, we're so grateful you took time to speak to us today. It's been an absolute honor, and I've learned a ton about you, and I can't wait to learn more. And we both hope that we can connect with you further on these conversations and more. So thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime, guys. I love doing this, and if we can change just a few more lives out there, I think that's a great day.
Definitely. So one more time, where people can go to the site, and anything else, any other things that you want to leave for people to check out.
Yeah, bioptimizers.com/DrDads. Dr. Dad's 10, you put that in, you get a discount on anything. Again, money back guarantee. We have education with all of our products. So we get videos and courses, and we'll share with you how to use it best. But I think most importantly, if you're listening to this podcast and you have to do it, I think it's really important to take a look at your life and look at the things that you are being successful with. And then the things that you're not. So everybody's got the goals list and all that sort of stuff, but some goals seem to be easier to achieve. And when it comes to health, the reality is a lot of people struggle because of the environment that we live in. We live in an environment, both information-wise and product-wise and authority-wise, that will lead you to sickness. So you want to get some people in your corner that can give you the proper strategy that will customize things for you, the N of one, because that's the only thing that matters, and that are going to hold you accountable so that you build the habits and start to reap the rewards, which anchor that into part of your identity. Because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to you identifying as a healthy person and developing the habits that you don't have to think about. And the reality is, if you're not there, you're going to need expertise to kind of guide you and put you to the fire until it becomes part, and you start to reap the rewards and realize it's worth it.
Wow. Beautifully said, man.
Mic drop. That was the perfect ending to this conversation. Thank you so much, Wade.
Thank you, Wade. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the Dr. Dads and share with your family and friends. You can also follow and interact with Dr. Nick and Dr. David on Facebook and Instagram for a daily dose of inspiration and the latest in health and wellness. Be well.